It's match day in the final of the Women's Champions League as Arsenal look to try and take on a Barcelona team who many feel are an insurmountable mission. But we know that many special things can happen in this competition. We've got transfer news on the men's side with Benjamin Sesko featuring heavily, and even more news regarding the final matches of the campaign. This is today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show, joining every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you're doing good. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a really good week. You've made it, of course, to the official weekend start this Saturday. And I hope you're looking forward to a weekend of football for the last time in a very long time. This will be the last weekend, of course, of action from an Arsenal perspective. Yes, there's other European finals to be played next week, but from an Arsenal point of view, this is the final weekend of football that we'll be discussing and talking about, and then it's all full steam ahead into the transfer window as we look ahead to what hopefully will be a very successful summer ahead of a brand new season. But good morning to you all joining us in the live chat. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. If you could drop a like, subscribe, all that usual YouTube-y stuff, that would be greatly appreciated. Good morning to Carlton and Paul. Good morning to Barry, Tom and John. We've got Peter. We've got Stevie and Grantley Poos and Natty Tom, Pan Rasta, Shari, Black Shine, Temi, Aaron, Carl. We've got Jackson and Peter. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is greatly appreciated, and really do indeed love the fact that you're all tuning in on a Saturday morning. It always takes a little bit of an extra kind of boost of motivation to tune in on a weekend, so thank you for that. Let's jump, though, to today's stories, and we start with what is certainly the biggest of today, and that is the Champions League final, where Arsenal will be taking on Barcelona, looking to claim their second title in the competition. Arsenal are indeed the only English side to ever win the Women's Champions League all the way back in 2007. I sat down with Karen Carney, former Arsenal midfielder and Chelsea midfielder as well, who, of course, won with that Arsenal team in 2007. To hear her thoughts, you can read the full interview of that on the football.london website on my personal page. So I recommend you, after you've listened to today's show, you go over and give that a really, really interesting insight into kind of the reality of this game, how much of a challenge Barcelona are going to be. And of course, the interesting rhetoric that Barcelona have had just 6 days to prepare for this game, whereas Arsenal have had 2 weeks, and whether that's actually an advantage or a disadvantage for either team. Certainly, Karen had her thoughts on what she would have rather had in the 2-week break between Arsenal playing and this final. But we wish them all the absolute best. You can, of course, watch the game later on today. It's a 5 o'clock kickoff UK time, taking place in Sporting. And hopefully, Arsenal can pull off another miracle. We keep our fingers crossed that it's certainly going to be the case. Moving into the men's side of things, and Miles Lewis-Skelly, Declan Rice, and Bukayo Saka are all in Thomas Tuchel's second England squad. They are all going to be part of the team, and it seems that this Miles Lewis-Skelly inclusion is something which Thomas Tuchel is certainly standing with, and Lewis-Skelly appears part of this England side for the foreseeable future. Thomas Tuchel was asked about Ben White, but it was decided that he would not be called up to this particular squad, considering the season, the injuries, but also some personal things going on the side of Ben as well. But there is a feeling that in the next international break, which will be in September, that Ben White, if he starts the season with Arsenal well, could be in with a chance of a call-up once again to the England squad. But other than that, Dean Henderson, Jordan Pickford, James Trafford with the 3 goalkeepers, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Dan Burn, Trevor Chalobah with the first call-up for him, Levi Colwill, Reece James, Ezri Konsa, and Carl Walker join Lewis-Skelly as the defenders. Jude Bellingham, Conor Gallagher, Morgan Gibbs-White, Jordan Henderson, Curtis Jones, Cole Palmer, Morgan Rogers, Ebere Eze join Declan Rice as the midfielders. And then Anthony Gordon, Harry Kane, Noni Madueke, Ivan Toney, Ollie Watkins all join Saka as the forwards. Interesting inclusion of Ivan Toney, considering, of course, he's been plying his trade currently in Saudi Arabia and is now a part of the team. Moving forwards, though, to our next story. And Jason Ayto, Arsenal's interim sporting director between the periods of Edu and Andrea Berta, and of course the assistant sporting director to Edu while he was in charge. Someone who's had a big hand in transfers at the club over the years, not really been a full-facing figure, and not many people have been too aware of his work behind the scenes at Arsenal over these last few years. He had a big hand in the work that went on to seal the deal for Martin Zubimendi, but after, of course, being unsuccessful in the running for the permanent position of sporting director, Jason Ayto is now set to leave. Arsenal, of course, wanted to keep him from the sounds of things, reported by both James McNicholas at The Athletic and Sammy Mokbel at the BBC. But it's interesting. I would recommend looking a little bit more deeply before people start embarrassing themselves with throwaway comments in chat boxes, because if you had any idea how much he actually was involved in some of the transfers that you all praised, you might be thinking differently. The January window was an utter failure. There's no doubt about that, and he rightly faces criticism for that. But it is amazing how quickly people turn, despite not really knowing the bigger picture around what work Jason Ayto was doing. And Edu got a lot of credit for the work that was done building this squad to what it is now, building a team that went from, 11th when Arteta came in to challenging for titles. Jason Ayto was a big part of what work went on behind the scenes to help build that squad to what it was. And yes, there was failure in January, but some of the words I've seen used around people just, I wonder if people would feel the same way if it was them in his position, having done the work that he had done behind the scenes over the last few years, to hear some of the words that some people are rather sillying themselves by saying. I can even see a few in the chat box as well, quite sadly. But the headline story of today is Benjamin Sesko, who, of course, is one of the key candidates to be Arsenal's new centre-forward. Now, we've known for some time that Arsenal's options in the position are broad, and they are looking at a number of players for the role. But the two leading candidates we have always known to be Sesko and Victor Gyökeres. Now, you've known that I've been pretty 50-50, slightly leaning, as you know, towards the Slovenian international, but open to seeing either of the two players that could indeed join Arsenal, because I think either of them would have serious impacts with the club and would be a positive introduction to the team. But it seems that Mikel Arteta's preference, if you like, because that is certainly the feeling, certainly the sense that it is Arteta who is the biggest fan of Sesko. We obviously heard that Andrea Berta was a big appreciator of Victor Gyökeres, but ultimately Arteta talked about alignment in some of his kind of press conferences towards the end of the season. And there will be a lot of discussions going on behind the scenes between Andrea Berta, between Arteta, between Richard Garlick, between Tim Lewis, the ownership, and of course the broader recruitment team at the club as well. James King also involved. And if they align on a particular player, it is not because there's been disagreements or arguments, or they've been, arguing between each other about who Arsenal should sign. When they move for a player, it is because they are all fully aligned on the decision. And Benjamin Sesko, of course, is one of Europe's best young centre-forwards. He's one of the best established centre-forwards right now in world football, playing for a team in Leipzig who have really struggled this year to create enough chances for their big man up top. Certainly, there is a high ceiling when it comes to Sesko. Certainly, I think there is more of a natural fit, which is why I've been leaning towards him, as you know, for a little while now. We've gone from kind of 50-50, but I've said if I was to pick between the two, I lean slightly towards Sesko, just because I think stylistically he fits Arsenal somewhat better than Gyökeres does. There's also the element that he plays in the Bundesliga, in one of Europe's top 5 leagues, has been performing against some of the best teams in the world, scoring against the likes of Bayern Munich, and of course playing in the Champions League and scoring against some very big teams there, like Atletico Madrid and Juventus and so on. So it's not like he shied away from the biggest of stages. And the issue, of course, with Gyökeres is if you do make that signing and he cannot find that transition to the Premier League from a league in which he is dominant at and dominant with his team as well, having just won back-to-back titles, there is lots of doubts between the two. I said that if either come in, I'm very curious to see what happens. And I'm curious to see which of the two does. I think there is a lot to be said about the idea that if Arsenal hadn't have made their move for Sesko and he went elsewhere, I would have been kind of concerned about the potential trajectory. We've been in these positions before where Arsenal obviously have moved or wanted a player like Isak. They've decided against the move and have come to regret it as well. And so maybe that is part of the thinking. I don't know. But Sesko, according to Florian Pletterberg in Sky Germany, suggesting that concrete talks are underway between Arsenal and Leipzig about potentially doing a deal. The player's release clause is around 80 million euros. However, there is a gentleman's agreement between Sesko and the club that he would be allowed to leave if a big club comes in, such as Arsenal. Maybe for that release clause, maybe for slightly less. After RB Leipzig missed out on European football, they are in much greater need of financial backing and financial support. We're going to go to part 2 now. Get some of your thoughts and feelings around these stories and more right after this. Right, this is part 2 of today's show. We'll be jumping into the chat box and tackling some of your thoughts and feelings. We're going to be making sure that we get through as many of them as we can over the next 20 to 30 minutes or so. Let's jump into the chat, shall we? Let's scroll up a little bit more because I'm sure I've missed some. Martin says, sadly, it's usually pretty inevitable that an internal candidate who is passed over by an external hire does tend to move on eventually. Good luck to him, of course, being Jason Ayto. Gibril says, could you ask Arteta? No. Descent says, Rodrigo signing is out of our reach financially, really. Just sell Havertz and the other bums. Yes, classic Descent. Dissenting there and unable to talk about players respectfully. Unfortunate. Tony says, Tom, is there a case for arguing this was Arsenal's best season for many years? No. But I'll carry on, Tony. When was the last time that we came this high in the Premier League and reached the semi-final of the Champions League? I see where you're coming from, but we were far less competitive. You know, last season, Arsenal won more games than the Invincibles, scored more goals than the Invincibles, came within 2 points of winning the hardest trophy to win on the planet. So I'd say last season was more impressive than this season. And part of that comes down to the fact that decisions that were made in the transfer window before last season were the correct ones and we benefited from them. Whereas this season, we didn't make those correct decisions and that ultimately harmed us, which is not the best idea. And says, Tom, sorry, but something stinks. This is unlike you, Anthony, to be skeptical. Something stinks about Sesko. Didn't want to compete with Havertz last summer, but wants to come now. If these rumours are true, we've had something stinks. I don't really understand what stinks, to be honest, Anthony. He's a player, of course, that's highly courted by a number of players. He didn't move last summer because Arsenal didn't front up the money early enough in that window. He wanted to sort out his future before the European Championships, and it couldn't be done before the European Championships, though he decided to stay, sign a new contract, played another season where he was guaranteed minutes at a young age. Instead of, if you want to, again, I'm worried, Anthony, you kind of fall into these binary categories of didn't want to compete with Havertz, not good enough. I'd really ask you to broaden your thinking on this one because that isn't exactly what happened at all. Oliver says, it would be a shame if we can't afford to bring in a world-class forward like Rodrigo because the cost of Sesko and Zubimendi, but both of those players are elite, so they will also improve us. Jack says, Tom, so you believe after scoring 13 league goals, Sesko can lead us to a Premier League or a Champions League? Big pressure for a young prospect. I don't know, is the honest answer, Jack. I don't know. I don't see a single centre-forward other than Isak on the market that could do that. I don't think Gyökeres necessarily guarantees that because of a lot of the doubts that surround him as well. But the thing about Sesko is that obviously he's been playing in a team that haven't provided him all that much with goals, and he's still managed to score a significant number in one of Europe's hardest leagues for a team that do not dominate that league whatsoever. So, Jack, I think there is a lot of ceiling there for Sesko. I think there's a lot of room there for Sesko, and I think stylistically he's a better fit than Gyökeres. But I'm still 50-50 on the pair because those numbers of Gyökeres you cannot ignore. You cannot ignore the volume of goals that he scored, but also it's fair to point out the number of penalties that Gyökeres has also added to that list as well, which is also a drawback. There are, as I say, there are drawbacks and benefits to both, hence why I've been so split on the pair. John says, Tom, if Max Dowman makes the first team next season, would he be considered someone who plays in the 8 role? He'd certainly be someone who plays in the midfield positions. He could play in Ødegaard's role. He could play in Rice's role. I think he needs to be given freedom, of course. The one thing I do worry about, and maybe it's just a thing about kind of watching him play for a youth team where he clearly is of a higher level, there is something to be said about maybe some selfishness in his game. I think that comes across in quite a lot of the videos. I think you see it not just for Arsenal, but on international levels as well. Of course, England lost last night in the under-17s to Italy. There is something to be said maybe about how long he holds on to the ball for. He needs to learn to release the ball earlier. These are things. He's a 15-year-old kid. Like, this is stuff that he needs to improve, obviously. But it's just things I noticed from seeing in his game so far that is going to be an element, I think, of his development under the senior Arsenal side that we maybe see grow and improve. But there's no doubt that he has got so much potential, and it's exciting to see what he can do in the team next season. Paul says Sesko is so average. The reason Arteta wants him is so Havertz and Sesko can be rotated at centre forward. Gyökeres would have Havertz on the bench, and with a 275k salary, it doesn't look good. I don't know where on earth these people get their views from. I really don't. It does make me laugh. Roland says, what price would you pay for Rodrigo? I'd say the price that PSG paid for Kvaratskhelia, not 100 million that is rumoured. I wouldn't be paying 100 million euros for Rodrigo. No, I think I said on the other show the other day, 60 to 70 million. I think that's what I said. That's what I'd be more comfortable in paying. Jack says Liverpool's business is looking scary good. Florian Wirtz potentially on his way to Liverpool. They didn't spend really anything last summer, so they were always going to have the financial freedom to move. Manchester City have pulled out of the deal for Wirtz because they think he's actually too expensive for them to make a switch for Florian Wirtz, which tells you how much it's going to cost. The suggestions that Liverpool might have to pay upwards of 120, 130, 140 million for Florian Wirtz. So a lot of pressure on the players' shoulders. You know that we've had Drew, our Bundesliga expert, on the show, who's not entirely convinced by Florian Wirtz. And so that's kind of key. Raf says, even with his non-penalty goals, he scored more than Sesko. I'm cool either way, but I think we're taking ourselves out of Gyökeres when he has a lot of benefits. Yeah, of course he has. But I think that there's the point, obviously, around how many goals he's scoring for the best team in Portugal as the most dominant centre forward in a far, far less competitive league than the Bundesliga. I think there's something to be said, about that. But as I kind of just giving it. I know people have their preferences, but I just don't think there's enough evidence for either player for you to be certain it's one over the other. I really don't think you can be so sure of one over the other, to be honest, because it's just not enough. There's just not enough to be sure about with that. Mark says Liverpool signing Frimpong. Wirtz going to be done, and over here at Arsenal, sleeping and monitoring average player. I mean, we've already agreed a deal for the best number 6 on the market. It's all well and good. Like, I mean, if you want to go over and support Liverpool because you seem enthralled by them, feel free to do that. But let's not pretend that Arsenal are not doing anything, because obviously they've already agreed a deal for the best number 6 on the market, as is. And now, of course, are making moves for forward players as well. Yeah, embarrassing yourself. There's a few people are doing this morning. Really keen to kind of show up how little they know. I don't know why. Oliver says, whilst I think the Gyökeres offers us something different that we don't have in the squad, I think Sesko complements the team really well. Also, the long shots that he takes. Watermelon says, Tom, do you think Arteta would prefer Sesko because Kai would be main striker? I don't think so. I think Arsenal would be spending 80 million euros on a player to be on the bench. It's amazing the mental gymnastics people are willing to do. Imagine being in a position where Arteta's been in these last few seasons. He's sitting there in a press conference saying, we need more firepower, we need more goals, we need more numbers, we need more creativity. Imagine saying all those things and then going into the position where you're going, right, who can I sign that's not better than who we already have, or I don't think could become better than we already have. So, you know what I'll do? Andrea, sign me this player. He'd be great for our bench. He's only 80 million. Can you imagine the mental gymnastics that you have to do to put yourself into a position where you genuinely think that that's a reality? Seriously, take a step back for a second. Sit yourself down. Maybe get a glass of water. Cool yourself. Really think hard how silly that sounds. Don't be satisfied with where we are. We need goals. We need firepower. We need to spend. We don't want to be left short. Hearing everything that we hear, really think hard for a second if you think that this manager with this club who have spent 105 million quid on Declan Rice, who are trying to keep hold of some of the more important players, are going into the market and signing the best number 6 on the market, and are then going to go, the most important position that we've ever had to sign for years. I know what we should do. Sign someone so we can keep playing the player that's currently playing and hasn't been playing because they've been injured. Let's sign that guy. That's a good reasoning to sign a player. Can you imagine the levels of mental fragility that exist? Is it true that Kai Havertz could yet still play plenty of minutes for us? Of course. And if he does do that, it's because he's earned it, not because we've signed somebody that was designed to get Havertz more minutes. The idea of signing players to be competitors is to push each other. It's as simple as that. And if you want to come on the show and tell me I'm wrong, Local Jun says you're such an Arteta propagandist. I'm more than happy to host people like yourself. We've done this a few times. They never show up. We get that. But if you want to come on camera and tell me why I'm wrong and put your point of view across, because I'm not about just one point of view. I want to get people like Local Juns on the show to tell me their opinion. So we can kind of work out why they have that view and why they're so strongly of the mind that Arteta can do no wrong, apparently, in my mind, which is not the case. People struggle with opposite points of view and think, of course, that if indeed if you think that just Arteta shouldn't go, you must have some kind of ulterior motive. It's sad that we still have these people here, but they won't come on the show. They will not come on the show. Rodney says, I will gladly come on. Please, Rodney, send me a DM. It's available, Twitter or Instagram. Drop me a message. X, my DMs are open on both. You can find access there. And if you drop me a DM, Rodney, I would happily host you. No problem whatsoever. I'll keep an eye out for you. But Rodney, I look forward to seeing you on the show very shortly. Jackson says, regarding style of play, couldn't it be said that Arteta has changed the style of play in the last 3 seasons? I mean, he had to change the style of play this season, without a doubt. He had to change the style of play this season because we were lacking so many players that ultimately we couldn't operate. Just for the record, Rodney, just to be specific, at the Gooner Talk on Instagram, at the Gooner Talk TV on X. So let me know where you're at. I look forward to speaking to you. Paul, I've just given you the place if you want to join me as well. Paul, feel free. Jack says, I've watched a lot of Sesko this season due to our links, and for me, he's not ready yet. He's still very raw. I mean, he's still young, of course, but there's a lot to like about it. A lot to like about it. Aral Gunner says, people want to get rid of Havertz and keep Trossard, yet isn't Havertz still in front on goals and he's been injured? I can't understand it. Nico says, Tom, who would be better at playing against low blocks? I mean, you could argue that you could argue that Sesko would be better because aerially he's more impressive as a player. Aerially he's done more. Aerially he's more threatening as a player. And as a result of that, of course, we would be better against low blocks with those types of movements. His technical ability is good. So for that reason, I'm looking forward to it. Rodney says, on Insta. I can't. Where? Where, Rodney? Please. Are you sure you're in the right place, Rodney? I mean, because I'm refreshing. Nothing's coming up, mate. Nothing's coming up. Refreshing. Nothing's there, fella. Are you lying? MK says Sesko is mediocre compared to Gyökeres. I don't get how that could be so stand out. Like I don't quite get how it's so chalk and cheese between the two in terms of how it's so certain that one will succeed where the other won't, when there's so many doubts associated with one over the other. That's my problem. That's my problem with it right now, is that I don't really get how the differences between the two so stark. But people entitled to their views, I guess. But I can't see it myself. I can't see how it's so different. Maybe you went the personal Instagram route. Shall we check? I'm not seeing it. Nope, still not seeing it, Rodney, mate. It's getting a little bit embarrassing. Ronald says, should we get Ekatike? Ekatike is a really interesting option as well. Somebody maybe again offers Arsenal a lot of different types of options. And I think maybe is more creative than the other two and collaborative than the other two. I'm not so sure. Sam says, if we don't buy Sesko now, it will end up becoming the best in the world and costing us 200 million. Tell your friends, go and get him tomorrow. Critical Thinker says, who do you think is to blame for this season, the board or Arteta? I think last season, obviously, the primary reason is injuries, and what we've had to deal with this season has been a joke. But you have to look at the recruitment in January and also in the summer. Arteta didn't get backed. We know that from what he was talking about. We know that from what he said in January. He wanted this player, he wanted that player, wanted strikers, he wanted forwards. We didn't sign any. So you got to look at the recruiters, and they're both gone. Edu's gone from the summer. Jason Ayto's now going from January. So people have got what they wanted. People, the people behind the scenes that are in charge of that, Paul says, how arrogant do you have to be to think the club would drop 70 million on a player just to be a scrub? This is a really good point. Like, imagine that's such an arrogant point of view, to believe that the only reason that they're not signing the player that you want is so that they can start the player that's currently starting. Absolutely nuts. Absolutely crazy to me. So there you go. Oh, we've got a DM. Is it Ronald? Is it Ronald? I don't know. It might be Ronald. It might be someone else who's just taken the opportunity. Or is it Juns? It could be Juns, to be fair. It might be. Says, I'll happily come on. I'm just saying, pick a striker you want. Don't sit on the fence for damage control is what I'm saying. I mean, yeah, let's get you on the show, Jun. Let's get you on the show, Matt. I'll send you the link right now. Because I'm curious, the propagandist kind of comment. I'm curious where that comes from. So let's do it. I'm just sending the link over to you shortly. So I should have been more prepared. Copy that link. Here we go. It's coming your way now. Into your DM, Jun. Let's get you on the show, fella. Let's get on the show. Just need a webcam, of course, as usual, and a microphone. So please get on. I'd love to hear from you. I have to be off by 9 because you can tell the missus is away this weekend because it's my turn to organise the shopping collection, and I may have done it as a delivery rather than collection. Mistake. So yeah, it's coming at 9, so I may have to hop off. But make sure you get on here quickly, Jed. Would love to host you. Let's stop saying that. Let's go over. Oh yes, of course, you must be over the age of 18, which is also another important point as well. Rancid says, why do people think they know everything better than the club do? Do they tell their dentist how to do their job? Wonton Soup says, honestly, just because a player scores a huge number of goals in one league doesn't mean that it will translate over to the other one. Kesman, Shevchenko stick in my mind. Darwin Nunez, obviously, is the other one that comes to mind more recently in the form of, certainly in the forms of kind of a recent Portuguese league example as well. So, yeah, would love to get some more examples in the chat. Let's get Jun on the show, though. He's very thankfully joined. Really appreciate you jumping on, Jun. How you doing, mate? You good, you well?
Hey, what's going? Love your show, by the way.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your comments. Why an Arteta propagandist?
Well, let me say it this way. Of course, like if I was in your position, I'd probably take the same line. Of course, you go in for a lot of interviews. You go in for press conferences and everything like that. So you've got a good relationship with the club. 1, 2, I do believe that it's a good thing what you're doing in a sense because you're trying to temper the expectations of the fans. Whether we do get Sesko or we do get Gyökeres, both would be great signings. I agree, but I'm saying right now for what Arsenal do need, I would rather the more mature striker, someone who is older, someone who has already played in the Premier League, who's already played in a lower division in England as well. He's got experience. He knows about the physicality of the league. Now, when I say propagandist, I don't mean it as it's not in a derogatory way, but I'm just calling it out as I see it to say, yes, of course, with your role, with your position, with your credibility with the club, it does follow to say that, for instance, if I knew Arteta or any of these people on a first name basis, and I knew he was doing his best for the club, I would temper the expectations of the fans to say, Sesko's a good signing and so is Gyökeres, you're right on that. But I do believe that is the line which the club wants to toe. Whereas if I ask you personally, who would you rather? You might say, I want Sesko because he's younger, or I want so and so because he's more experienced. But you're taking the fence with it in a good way to kind of, to create a good relationship and a good feel around the club, which is a good thing essentially, because we don't want hatred between fans and X, Y, and Z. We want to push in the same direction. But I do believe, some of the things that you are saying, it is for the better of the club, but it is towing what the club would want you to put out rather than personally who do you think is the better striker. if you get what
Okay,
I'm trying to
I'll
say.
let you. I didn't interrupt you because I wanted to,
No,
to
you're right.
to get your points
Yeah.
out. I'll tackle the 2 points. So the first one, the club side of things.
Hmm.
If that was true, I wouldn't label things failures like the January
Yeah.
window, an utter
Fair enough.
failure. What we did in the summer, not good enough.
Hmm.
This market for me has to be a 9 or 10 out of 10 window. Otherwise, it in
Spot on.
itself is also a failure. That's not tempering expectations. That's raising expectations because my expectations are incredibly high for this summer. And if indeed we
Mhm.
don't go out and do the business that I think we need to do during this window, which is at least 5 signings, in my opinion, I'm already setting out that as my expectation, then
Mhm.
I will label it a failure. And Andrea Berta will have failed in his first window. So I get where you're coming from
Mhm.
in terms of kind of this example, but I think it's just a conflation of where my view is on the centre forward
Yeah.
with what my role is. I
Mhm.
appreciate, and by the way, first of all, massive respect for coming on. It takes bravery to do so.
I
I do
agree. It was
respect.
clickbaity what I said as well. Sorry, my bad. But you know what?
What people
It is.
type in a chat box during and what people say in face to face are always going to be very, very different. I've
Yeah,
never
it's
had
a
anyone come up to
bit
me
of
in person to
banter,
say some of
but
the stuff they say
I agree
online.
with
It
you
just doesn't happen.
completely. I agree with you completely. I get what you're saying now. But
Mm.
yeah, I do think for me personally, um, I want Gyökeres, but at the same time, if we get Sesko, I'd love that too because I
Mate, you
know
need to
we
get
can
off the
have him for
fence.
10. We can have him for 10 years. Do you know
You
what I
need to get
mean?
off the fence. You need to pick
And
one,
he'll
mate.
no. But I'm saying I want Gyökeres. I want Gyökeres.
Sure,
But
sure.
if we get Sesko, I'm not going to be disappointed because it's 10 years, and I know with the proven track record of Arteta, he improves players. Like for instance, even a Nunes at Liverpool. If he was at Arsenal, I don't think he'd be missing the chances that he's missing at Liverpool. I think Arteta is very good at man management and taking out certain things that players have in their game and improving them. Obviously, from his time with Pep,
Mm.
he's a mastermind in that. The only issue he's had is like injury wise. All the players I've seen play for him have clearly improved, who've actually sat under him. But yeah, I would say yeah, I completely agree with you. I understand where you're coming from, and now I don't think it's so much of a party line. I think is of
Yeah,
course
I
in
think
previous things you
that's
have
why I wanted
said,
to
you
get you on the
know,
show, Jim, because, like,
yeah,
from my perspective, I think you can probably understand it. It's quite a
mhm.
frustrating thing to be labelled. It almost makes me
Yeah, I know it was
when
clickbait.
someone
Sorry,
puts that to
I,
me, it's
I have
basically
to be
saying that
honest, it
you're
was
not allowed to
clickbait.
have an opinion. Like when the reality of the scenario is that
Mhm.
I can't go on to if I want to go to a press conference or I want to go to
You have to be
games and be in there.
respectful.
The only
Mhm.
thing that I can't do that would change the way in which that I am viewed or the access that I get those through, which is by the way, I'm not employed by Arsenal. I'm
Of course
employed by
not.
Football London,
Hmm.
and we cover Arsenal. And as part of any media that covers Arsenal, you request access for accreditation for games. You go to games, you write your piece, so on and so forth. Sometimes you get questioned on what you've written. I've been questioned sometimes and been like, what do you feel? And I'll back my point. I'll be like, yeah, I don't actually agree. I think, I think it's fair what I wrote. I think it's fair that I was critical in this sense or critical. And sometimes I'll be like, okay, fair enough. You've raised a fair point. But
Hmm.
I look at this scenario right now. And I don't know if you saw the story yesterday come out where Gary Neville's been banned from the Nottingham Forest game. Like he can't cover the
Okay.
game at Forest on
Yeah.
Sunday in the stadium. They've banned him because if you read the article on the story, he likened, I think, Nottingham Forest to a mafia gang, is what he likened them to.
I don't agree with Neville on a lot of things. I would say though, I do think in his position, being an ex-player and being a TV pundit, I think he needs to stop trying to do it in like a fan, in like like how you have your fan channels and you can be like,
Mm,
you can completely give your opinion without, tempering it and being respectful. I think a lot with, Neville and Carragher sometimes they try to emulate the fan channels too much and then you kind
I
of they
agree.
lose their credibility.
I
So that's
agree.
why I say like in that sense, that's why I can see where, yes, I called you a propagandist in a
Are,
clickbait
are we
way. In a
taking that
clickbait
back
way.
now? Are we
Yeah, I
are we
take it back. Yeah,
retracting
no,
that
I only
statement?
said it. I only said it to be clickbaity. But yes, yes.
I
And
respect you
look, it
being
got me
honest.
on the channel. So, but yeah, yeah, I do. I don't think you are. To be honest, in reality, that's why I watch I watch it every time it comes on. But yeah, I do agree. I think also on the flip side, people like Neville needs to temper what he says as well in a similar way to say yes, I am an Arsenal fan, like you're an Arsenal fan, but you have to obviously at the same time be professional. So that's
Mm.
where I'll say I can
Yeah,
understand
look,
where you
and
are.
that's the thing. It's
Yeah.
like people say, "Oh, you don't," as you kind of hinted to earlier. Whether you still think it now, like you don't want to lose your access to the club, you don't want to lose your access to press conferences. What I'm trying to say to people is the only
Mhm.
way that would happen is if I was disrespectful.
Exactly.
That's the only way that if I can be critical, I can call the January window an absolute failure. I can say that it's going to be very difficult for Mikel Arteta to maintain his tenureship if he continues to go trophyless in the next couple of seasons. I've said I'm on record saying that I think he has to deliver a Premier League or a Champions League title within this contract to earn the next one. So this is where I get that people just don't really like the cut of my jib sometimes, or just be broad in their criticism. But I have respect you so much, Jun, for reflecting on what you said.
I respect you more, actually. Having a look back as well, you know, there was a comment earlier where I was talking about the players are bums. Like, that's the kind of thing. Which,
this is what I mean.
So this is I do respect you more. I was just in a sense, I was just trying to tease out like which one you'd prefer. But I think when you say that you prefer, you're kind of like similar to me in that both of them are very top class strikers right now in the market, the highest that is to offer, and whichever you take is going to be good for the club. So I agree with you on that.
June, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you, mate. It really has.
A nice one.
It's been a nice experience.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks, man. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. See you later.
Cheers,
Bye. Cheers, bye-bye. Brilliant stuff. Thank you, June, again. And this is what I mean. It takes cojones, as Troy Deeney would say, to hop on a show, especially when indeed that you've been in that position where it's difficult to see the difference between reading a message online and reading a message in the chat box and then reading a message or saying something in person. It does change the context. It's a really good experience to be able to do that. And I hope that those that have listened in the chat box that maybe were sitting there saying things similar to what you might write behind a keyboard, when you come into a position of talking in person, it does change things. So yeah, that's what I look at. Rodney has sent me a DM. We are in the process of hopefully getting Rodney on the show. Unfortunately, Paul says he doesn't have Instagram or Twitter. You can find my email, Paul, on the about page of the YouTube website. I'll keep an eye out on my emails. Drop me an email, mate. If you don't have email, I'm going to start to think you might not be telling the truth. Alex says, feels so weird to have finished the season already. I absolutely agree with you, Alex. It's gone I think it's gone really fast, to be fair. Temi says, doesn't say anything actually. Temi's just been a member with us now for 13 months, which is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Temi, for your kind support. And Carl, thank you so much for the kind donation. You didn't leave a message attached to it. I'm just going to have a quick look now to see if you left a message afterwards, Kyle, because sometimes people do the mistake of typing in a donation. They want to type a message and then click enter before they actually write the message out. So I don't see another message that's come through from you since. So I'm going to assume that it was just a very kind donation. But if I do see another message from you, don't super chat it. I'll do my best to try and point it out in chat box if you keep an eye out as well. For any messages from Carl, I'll do my best to try and read them. Thank you, Claire, as well. Of course, has been a member now of the channel for 21 months. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for the kind support. Lovely stuff. So there you go. We're still trying to get Rodney on. And we will be around for at least another 15 or so minutes. So you've got plenty of time, Rodney. So make sure you get on the show, mate. Joe says, how confident are you on the Saliba and Gabriel contract extensions? Pretty confident. I feel pretty good about them. They're both happy at the club. They both like being at the club. They both haven't shown any desire really to move elsewhere at all. And the hope is that they will be extended. That's what we got hope for. Clint says, now that it's confirmed that we can't afford Rodrigo, who do you... Is it? When was that confirmed, Clint? I've not seen that story. I've not even heard that myself. Rodrigo. Arsenal. Who's reporting Arsenal can't afford Rodrigo? Is it the wages? Is the wage thing you're talking about? Obviously, the wage thing is a negotiation. The wages are going to be very high. He's going to want certain assurances. Maybe Arsenal structure it in a certain way. But I think in terms of wages, if he's looking for something that goes well beyond our top earners, it's not a case of we can't afford it. It's more to do with your wage structure and those. It says Fabrizio has reported on it. Let's have a look, shall we? Let's see if we can scroll down. Nothing there. Still scrolling. 10 hours ago. Are you sure Fabrizio said it this morning? Because I'm not seeing anything. Unless I'm just blind, I can't see anything. Let me do a quick search, Rodrigo, of Fab's tweets. No, the last time that Fabrizio tweeted Rodrigo was May 22nd. So I don't know if you've been duped, Clint, by something else, or it was posted elsewhere. I don't know. Rodney has joined us. Hopefully we can get him on. Here we go. How you doing, mate? You good? You well?
Yeah, hi. Good morning, Tom. How you doing?
Morning, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. I I know you got some stuff to do outside
It's all
this
right, man.
live.
Talk to me, man.
So okay. Now I've been a football fan since the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a psychiatrist, psychologist by trade.
Oh no, you're assessing me already.
Well, I analyze a lot of people. What I've noticed over the 20, 30 years, which is interesting, is the psychological games that boardrooms and transfers and news and all the rest of it that they play. So so analyzing, let's say for the example, 2024 and 2025. The first thing is that, and I could go back as far as the COVID era. I'm sad to say, but I remember that just a snippet is that during the COVID, as you all know, there was no fans at all. Kroenke borrowed, I think, 180 million pound from the government because he was complaining that okay, he's not getting no income. So he borrowed the money and he paid it back cash. There was no installments. He paid cash on January 2022. So that brought alarm bells to me. I was smiling because I recognized this guy's mindset. Now, why I say that as an example is to show you, Tom, and others that it's not to say that they don't have the finance, they do. Now, what people I've been analyzing each transfer markets, and I've been analyzing I watch each and every press conference of Mikel.
Yeah.
Of course, that's my field of work, analyzing people. What I've noticed, and this is a problem, and also Berta, who signed to be the sporting director for Arsenal.
Yeah.
What I've analysed is that the reason why they brought in Berta is to reduce income, to maximise profit.
If Arsenal have a record window this summer, which there is a sense they could do, would that completely spear your argument?
Well, Tom, I understand the question and I appreciate it. However, we have to I'm looking at both sides of the coin, and I'm putting my mind in the mind of the boardroom and Kroenke. Now, we have injuries. Yes, there's some parts that Mikel has made mistakes on. The mistakes that he has made exposes how naive he is. There's no question about that.
Right.
The question, and these are the players. Lokongo, he bought in Fabio Vieira last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't last minute. It was early in the window. We signed Fabio Vieira. I think it was July.
No, it wasn't, Tom, because I tell you why. It's because even Ornstein and Fabrizio, who I don't believe whatsoever, because
sorry, it was June.
What?
I just checked it. It was June we signed him in. It
Was
was
it
even
June?
earlier.
Okay.
It was June. June 21st, Fabio Vieira.
I stand corrected. However, right, he's now on loan, like most of them are. Now, fast forward, Berta is being brought in to sell these players to get maximizing his profit for the club. The issue is now, is if you look at the wage market, the wages within Arsenal and these players, and this is why Kroenke is very, very shrewd. Kroenke has now recognized that the players that mistakes have been made within the boardroom, and hence the reason why he's rather skeptical of the boardroom. So therefore, what I'm saying is Kroenke has always been shrewd. What he does is basically is enforcing his son to say, well, look, I'm not going to give you any money until you sell these players. Yes, I'm going to give you money. but it
When
won't
was
be
the
the
last
money.
time Arsenal made profit in a window? Can you tell me the last
No,
time they made
come on,
profit in a
Tom.
window?
I think Tom, you understand. You know the answer to that question you asked. With the greatest of respect,
Do you know the answer to the question?
he has never made profit. Yes, he has. My apologies. He has. He made 3.1 million profit last season based upon the transfers. So what I'm saying by that, the players that he sold, that was sold,
Yeah.
right, and the
Yeah.
players, the money, and look, I'm not sure what money he's given to boardroom in order to get Calafori and so on and so on. Yeah. So what I'm saying is,
Right.
yes, if you look at all, we know it's poor, the transfer, we can agree on that. However, the point is, I've always said it since 2023. The only way Arsenal could compete, Conte needs to give a suitable amount of money.
How do you do that within the confines of profit and sustainability and FSP?
Very good question. I like it. No, understand that. However, the players that he sells, right? Yes, you can both agree that he has not made maximum profit. He's not going to, because most of these countries are poor in regards to buying players in some cases. So therefore, he's already established that you're not going to get maximum profit. However, the flip side of this coin is that Fonke has already established the money that is being given, the money that has been spent when given has been not so good. Because if you look at Havertz,
Rodney, I'm really struggling to get a grasp on your argument. I'll be very honest with you.
Okay, my argument is this. Okay, my argument is this, Tom. He needs to sell players. The money that he gets.
Yeah. When you say he, you mean Kroenke?
Yeah, they need to sell. They need to sell. They need to sell players, get maximum profit, and in order to compete for next season, he would have to at least be given the boardroom or Berta at least £300 million. He cannot get rid of Gabriel Jesus and others. Well, we can get rid of Fabio and a few others. That's Berta's field. However, £300 million would be suitable. However, as regards to the players that you get for that £300 million, I don't think Sesko is good enough. I think the best person that I think would be appropriate would be Rodrigo, and of course, Gyökeres. However, if both of them are going to come in, no, they're not going to, because of the wage demand.
No, they're not going to come in, because if you sign Gyökeres, Sesko would turn around and be like, "Why would I sign for Arsenal? You've just signed Gyökeres." And if we sign Sesko, Gyökeres would turn around and say, "Why would I sign for Arsenal?"
Yeah, that's going to be a mind game. Yeah, that's going to be a mind game, Tom.
It's not a mind game, mate. That's just the reality, isn't it? Because if you're going for a job, if you're going to position at a job, and there's one role available really that's played, and also you've already got a number 2 in Kai Havertz, and you're told that we really want you, and then you see them appoint somebody else into that position, you're going to be like, well, why don't I just go play? Why don't I just go for that other job where I'm going to know I'm going to get minutes, I'm going to get time, I'm going to get exposure, I'm going to get.
True indeed.
Why would I do that?
True indeed. I think Gyökeres, in my humble opinion, I think that Gyökeres and what's his name, Rodrigo, be suitable enough. Zubamende, yes, supposedly we've got him. I don't believe that until I see the person signs. I'm not going to get any hype on this speculation.
Can I ask you a question then, Rodney? Because you said throughout this whole thing, like, you're extrapolating. You're making assessments. You're making psychological profiles on Alberta. You believe that he's being brought in to make us money more than to spend money. You're talking about the issues with the ownership. You've got all this extrapolation. You've got all of this judgment. All of this. I'm not sure I quite believe this. I'm not sure I believe, but I feel as though I think this on this topic. But when it comes to Zubamendi, all of a sudden it's like, I don't know. I won't believe that until he's in the shirt. But you will believe loads of things that you don't know behind the scenes. But you're sitting here and being skeptical about whether or not we've signed Zubamendi. I think there's a confliction there. That's all.
Okay, evidence has proven transfer market last year and this year. So therefore, my point I'm saying is, right, Mikel asked for on the January that he wanted players. He didn't get them. Right?
Yeah.
Look at the injury. Yes, I've digged in and researched on Zumamende for the
Right.
past 2 or 3 months. And this is why I said what I said. However, the bottom line is the transfer market is starting soon. It's to be expected that all newspapers and all podcasters will be pushing out what they've read. I'm sitting back and observing podcasters who are saying, okay, this is coming, this player is coming, and so on. I've seen it. So therefore,
who's the only player anyone said is coming is Zubamendi, because that is all but agreed and has been since January. I don't know who else anyone could have said is coming. Can you name anybody?
well, I just highlighted.
Yeah, give me one example, just one.
I'll give you one. I'll give you one. Rodrigo.
Who has said that Rodrigo is coming to Arsenal?
I said I've listened to podcasters.
Yeah,
and
just one.
Now, gosh. Okay. I listened to Judge Mo podcast.
Who, sorry?
I've listened to Judge Mo. You know Judge Mo?
No.
Judge Mo podcast. Judge as in a judge.
Judge Mo.
No, Judge Mo.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, that's fine, Tom. That's fine.
No, sorry. Is it Footy Judge Mo? Is that who it is?
Exactly. I'll call him Judge Mo.
Okay, Footy Judge Mo, yeah. 31,000 subscribers. He has said that Rodrigo is coming to Arsenal.
I could have misquote coming.
Don't misquote, because you've just said that you've listened to
I've realized this. I've realized this. I should use the word he has highlighted. That's the word I should be using. So what I'm saying is, from an Arsenal fan since the 1970s, I'm going to sit back with the greatest of respect and look at to see. But as I say, every time they come out with whoever coming to Arsenal, I never get hyped about it. I just look and just see. But in the back of my mind, of course, naturally, I'm going to be skeptical because
I hear you, Rodney. My issue with everything you've said is that every time I've asked for an example, we've had an issue and a problem. I'm going to take you off the screen because I don't really appreciate the smoking on my stream. It's a bit disrespectful. Paul, thank you so much for coming on as well. We're going to have time for Paul now as well. Sorry for making you wait, Paul. I really appreciate it. How are you doing, mate? You good? You well? Can I hear you? Is a good question. Can you speak for me again?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Just about. Maybe speak up a little bit, but talk to me, man.
Yeah. So my opinion is based on. I just think Gyökeres is a better fit for us at the moment in terms of just finishing. Arteta really complained about issues we've had in both boxes this season. And I think Gyökeres is the right person to rectify that problem. So if you look at, for example, the Champions League semi-finals,
yeah,
he had the best XG amongst all the teams, if I'm not wrong.
Who's that?
But we struggled
Gyökeres?
No. So Arsenal had the best XG.
Sorry, Arsenal had the best XG in the semi-finals. Yeah, sure, 5.11. Yes. I think it was something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we struggled to finish our dinner. That's the issue.
Agreed.
See with Arsenal this season.
Agreed.
We created. We don't have a problem creating chances. We have a problem finishing chances. Gyökeres is the best finisher out there. Yeah, I think only maybe Haaland has a better XG than him. Or sorry, like conversion.
Okay, so we're going off of XG. Is that the measure that we're using? Do you know Gyökeres' XG?
Either one. But yeah, for me, he's clearly...
It's probably best to use his non-penalty XG. So non-penalty XG this season for Gyökeres, 21.4. Expect non-penalty goals. He's scored 27 non-penalties. Last season, 18.7 non-penalty XG, and has scored 24 non-penalty goals. That was the season before last. So he's outperforming his XG at the moment at a good rate. certainly, which is why I think Arsenal are one of the teams interested.
Yeah.
But my issue with the argument is that why it's so obvious that he is the better option compared to Sesko. Because like if you look at Sesko's non-penalty XG, right? So in 23-24, Sesko's non-penalty XG was 7.7. His non-penalty goals was 14. He nearly doubled his non-penalty XG. Gyökeres did not nearly double his non-penalty XG. In fact, he came nowhere near doubling his non-penalty XG last season. This season, different story. You got Gyökeres outperforming his XG by what's that there? 6.6. He's outperforming it by this season. Sesko is outperforming his XG by much less, but it's only 2.6. So across 2 seasons, we've got evidence that both players are good finishers because they're outperforming their non-penalty XG. But this idea that Gyökeres is by far and away, and I'm not saying like he's not a better finisher, but the examples that we have across both seasons, last season, Sesko was a better finisher based upon the numbers that we have. This season, Gyökeres has been a better finisher based on the numbers we have. But the difference between the two is that Sesko is performing for far and away not the best team in his respective league. He's not getting the number of chances that Gyökeres is getting in his league. He's not getting the space that he gets. He's not going up against as good defenders, as good goalkeepers. And so there's an argument there that those numbers will be higher as a result. Is that a fair argument?
It's a fair argument, but also the Premier League is a harder league than the German league. Obviously, Portugal is a much weaker league. We can all agree with that. But it's not like it's not like Gyökeres isn't performing in the Champions League. It's not like he's not performing on international level as well.
Yeah, didn't say he was, but yeah.
He starts with Isak, and he's outperforming Isak in the Swedish team as well. So I can see if we go for Sesko, I'll support him. We don't have a choice.
Yeah,
I'll definitely support the player. But at the moment, we don't. I see Sesko as more of a project player. We need to win now. Liverpool are adding Florian Wirtz potentially. That's best in class in that position as an attacking mid or number 10. We don't have time to be adding a player who potentially could get to world class level. I believe
Gyökeres isn't world class, is he?
I believe he's nearly there.
How can he be nearly there if he's only performing in? Well, not only, but I don't get how you can call anyone world class in that division. Personally, with respect, I just don't. I don't get how you can.
He is playing in Portugal. That's fine. Even if you look at the Golden Boot numbers, for example, when they compare the different leagues, they always add a caveat for the Portuguese league. So they give it they adjust the score
for good reason.
He's still top.
Did you ever hear of a player called Jonathan Soriano? You ever aware of a player called Jonathan Soriano?
No.
So he played for Red Bull Salzburg, obviously a team that Erling Haaland played for before he moved to Borussia Dortmund, which is a club that long-time listeners of the show know I'm a big fan of and follow a lot of what they do. And in 2012-13, he scored 29 goals in 38 league games, across all comps, 29 and 38. In 2013-14, he scored 48 goals in 43 games. In 2014-15, he scored 46 goals in 49 games. And in 2015-16, he scored 32 goals in 34 games. Eventually, because he initially was at Barcelona, he was in Barcelona's youth team before he made that switch, scoring a lot of goals there, 32 goals in 37 games. There is something to be said about players that play in divisions that are, particularly when they're very dominant of those divisions, like Sporting are in Portugal and like Salzburg are in Austria, for example. Not this season and last season, but certainly when Soriano was playing. That there's an issue and there's a doubt by clubs that those players can transition those numbers that they're scoring in those leagues. And he was of a similar age to what Gyökeres is now when he was doing that you can translate those numbers into the Premier League. And so when you're seeing the numbers of Gyökeres, for example, for the best team in that league with what all it comes with, and then you're seeing Sesko, for instance, putting up very good finishing numbers in his respective league, which is harder for a team that is not as dominant, doesn't create as many chances. I think that's why you can argue that it's not as far apart as what you're making it out to be when it comes between the two choices. That's the argument we're having here, is that one is way better option than the other.
I get your point. I believe Sesko could get there. That's we no one can predict the future. We've seen players who've peaked very early in their career. We've seen players who've peaked very late in their careers. It all depends. But for what we need right now, I just believe Gyökeres is, for me, it's a no-brainer. Like,
okay,
just
that's fine. That is fine, Paul. What I would say though is that like that's an absolutely fine opinion to hold, and I've got nothing against that. And there's a lot of people that would agree and say that their number one pick is Gyökeres. My issue is when someone puts across a different point of view. I don't get why heads roll so much, like in the chat box, for instance. Like, if you think that if Gyökeres is the better option, that's fine. I just can't get my head around why heads start to roll in the chat box if someone else says Sesko is their pick. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, which is fair. Everyone has their preference. The thing is, at the end of the day, none of us can predict the future.
No.
We can just go based on the information we have and the evidence we have currently. And I believe currently that Sesko would potentially, he could come in and hit the ground running, but I believe he's more of a project player who's going to be probably good in 3-4 years. Whereas looking at the squad we have right now, and Man City are going to come back stronger next season. Liverpool are going to be very strong next season. I think we need to be going for a killer up front, and I think that's Gyökeres.
Fair play. I respect you and I respect the opinion, Paul. So thank you so much for taking the time and your patience for coming on the call. It is greatly
thanks for having me on the show. And
we've broken some trends today. So many people don't usually front up and show up, and you and Rodney and Jun all have. So thank you, mate. I really do appreciate it. Thanks, Paul. Lovely stuff. That brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Really appreciate it. Apologies for certain parts of the show. I think what this show has done today is like, everyone wants a poll. I'm only going to be live for like 2 minutes. Do you reckon you can vote really quickly on a poll about Gyökeres and Sesko? Let's okay. Who would you prefer? Sesko, Gyökeres. There you go. We'll have a poll for like a couple of minutes, just to get kind of a bit of a feel. And then it's you know, I'll speak for a few more minutes while we get some words on that poll. But I think this is eye-opening for me, right? Because what we heard from, in particular, Rodney, was an argument, obviously, that was flawed beyond measure. Like, the idea that we're bringing in Berta to make us money, or that Kroenke has only been interested in not spending money when the only time we've made profit in a window, and by the way, it was incorrect to say that we made 3 million profit in the last window. We actually still made a slight loss because the David Raya deal pushed, where we had to pay off the David Raya deal basically to push that through, sent it into a slight loss. And as we know, it was a loss because we saw the accounts, of course, come out in 2023 and 24. But also, the last time we made like a win in the window, a profit in the window, was 2017-18. I think it was that window. That was the last time Arsenal made a profit, which was before Kroenke's took full control of the club. It was a year before that as well. Every single year since they took on the club, we've made losses. We've spent more than we've made. We've spent more than we've sent for. And it's this kind of, and also the whole thing about the Zubimendi, the idea of all this speculation and conspiracy, and yet being so sure that the Kroenkes have no interest in spending, or just are only interested in, you know, making money, and to then turn around and say that you don't believe the Zubimendi links, despite that being the most concrete thing we've heard all summer. and then say that there are podcasters out there. And by the way, I meant no disrespect to Judge Mo. I was not aware of his content. I wasn't being facetious or anything. Like, I genuinely wasn't aware of his content. So go subscribe to Footy Judge Mo. I don't need more YouTube drama. I'm sure he produces some great content. But maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I'm promoting the wrong guy. But to turn around and say I've heard it be said on a show that it's coming. I ask for one example. One. That's all I ever do. I only ask people for one example. And when the one example crumbles and falls apart, you're just like, where do we go from here? But thank you to Rodney. Thank you to Paul, to June as well, who I think that was a really good call, because I think what it showed is that, like, language we're using chat boxes and comment sections, and then when you get to face and you talk face to face, it shows you kind of what the difference between those two conversations are and what they're like. And I hope I explained that, because I know a lot of people feel the way they feel about kind of my role position. I find it odd that I have to tell people that I'm not employed by the club. And like, people think for some reason that if you go to press conferences or you go to games and you sit in the press box, which by the way is my job, that for some reason that you're not allowed to be critical. The only thing you're not allowed to be is disrespectful. That's where the line is. And inaccurate, of course. You know, if you're inaccurate, if you lie, if you misrepresent, mislead, that isn't it in its own way a disrespectful thing. And that's what I don't quite get about that argument, is like, people have this, and some people are really passionate about this point of view, that me or Harry or others who get to go to the games and do our job, you know, have any kind of ulterior motive. It's always an odd one to me. I think it's a bit of a cop-out argument, and I mean this as respectfully as possible. It is a bit arrogant to think that the only reason why someone has a different opinion to your own is because there must be some kind of ulterior motive going on. That's such an arrogant position to hold. Such an arrogant to think that somebody could not possibly think differently to you unless there was some benefit they were some kind of getting. Jurgy says, I think they're frustrated at the club and they want to take it out. Yeah, I get that. You know, it's maybe we're as close as an access to the club as they think that they can get. I'm in no way associated with Arsenal in any kind of employment capacity. I've never received a penny from the club about anything ever. You know, I've never done any work for them at all. So, and some people have, just because it's an opportunity for work, like commentary or design, I guess, podcasting, like going on the breakdown. You don't get paid for that, but it's just a great exposure. Like, it's strange. I certainly don't get it. So just to make it very clear, the only thing that I would never line crossing is being disrespectful. This bit of hair is really irritating me. I don't actually realise. It's these headphones. It's why I wear a hat every day, to contain this. It's really, really irritating. But yeah, like, I don't really know how much more I can explain it other than that. The only line that you don't cross is that disrespectful, inaccurate line. That's it. And as I say, my DMs are always open if you've got a question, if you've got a concern, if you feel as though I'm not being 100% honest or I'm not saying things of what I mean. I mean what I say what I mean. Every opinion I put across here is my own and only my own. They change, because opinions should change. Your mind should change. What's the point of having one if you don't have one? You know, it makes no sense. So anyway, shall we do a quick check on our poll? I feel like I've vamped long enough. We've had 300 of you have now voted, and slightly leaning towards Gyökeres. 55% of people say Gyökeres. 45% of people say Sesko, which is probably like the flip of where my mind is. I'm like 55. I'm slightly leaning towards Sesko. The other, yeah, smoking disrespectful. Yeah, imagine that. Come on Twitch. Imagine doing that in like a meeting. Like, this is like, there's 1,000 people watching or whatever, jumping on a call. I would never jump on someone's show and just start smoking. I don't get that. I just think it's rather disrespectful. And that's why I ended that call. That happened once, and I kind of let it go. The second time, I was like, nah. Anyway, thank you so much as always for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day. Enjoy yourselves. Stay safe. Stay well. Stay happy and respectful. And as always, vote Sesko. I mean, up the Arsenal. See you later.